Hello, my friends. I read a quote the other day. Srinivas Rao, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was the author. And this video is going to be almost a distillation of that quote. It's something I'm going to be sharing with the forest monks this year because it's so powerful and it can lead us into really understanding a part of our brain that we're usually not aware of. You hear me talking about this a lot. Our culture delivers all kinds of normal things into our life. And these become the foundation, our basis, our reality. To question those things can seem, well, crazy, because they're just the way things are. Yet when these things are operating silently in the background, they affect everything. Okay, here it is. Reality is what happens between stimulus and reaction. If we think about that for a moment, this world is full of stimuli. And when a stimulus comes into our senses, then very often we react. And that reaction creates our sense of reality. So I'm sitting in a circle with some of the forest monks and somebody throws a pine cone into my face. And there's the stimulus. Just got hit in the face with a pine cone. And this instant reaction comes up. Why'd you do that, jerk? I start to think of that person as unthoughtful, as undisrespectful. I'm getting angry. My whole vision of that person becomes colored. Now I've created a reality about that person. I could have thought, oh, they throw that pine cone and they are trying to help me out with my martial training. And I failed to evade that pine cone. Now they've become a friend and a training partner. It's just how I framed it. Stimulus, a reaction, or what happens in between there, that is the shaping of our reality. And the trick with this is that almost all of the time, stimulus and reaction follow so quickly that we feel like we are at the mercy of the world. Stimuli are coming in and we react to them. This is a terrible day, right? Because that person cut me off in traffic and my boss yelled at me and that tire's leaking air again in my car. I feel victimized by the stimulus that are coming into me. And in general, we feel pretty powerless. In this state of mind, I blame the stimuli. I don't realize that there is this thing happening, this space between stimulus and response, stimulus and reaction, where I can respond, where I can choose, where I can look and observe what's happening. The quote goes on to say that if we can expand that distance between stimulus and reaction, that we come to a new ability in our lives to not be in negative reaction all the time. That space happens so quickly, but as we become more mindful of our inner state, then we expand that space out. And a stimulus comes in and we can observe it and we can look at it and think about it. Now there's another aspect to this that wasn't spoken about in the quote. And that is sometimes I can have a stimulus and I can observe my reaction. There's a lot of time. Now, the reaction happens, but I see it unfolding. And you've probably experienced this as well. So somebody calls you a name, and it creates a reaction, but you start thinking, okay, yeah, this is really bothering me, but I know I'm better than this, right? Somebody calling you a name, that's them. That has nothing to do with you. That just has to do with them. And yet I feel it just continuing to kind of stir inside of me and build over time. In this case, I'm aware of it, but I can't resist the siren song, the temptation to keep staying in reaction. These negative feelings often can kind of oddly feel good. We're angry with somebody and we kind of want to stay angry. And then we're unable to get out of it because of that momentum. So that's the other aspect of the tools that I'm going to talk about right now. And the first is going to be mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is really the same as the second tool, which is meditation. But in mindfulness, we're trying to be in a meditative state during our daily life. And what that means is being aware. It just means being aware. Not just aware of our environment and somebody sneaking up behind me, but mostly being aware of my mental state. This takes a lot of training because we have become so unmindful in our lives that stimulus reaction, and we're caught in that reaction. Our whole mental activity is taken up by being frustrated and angry and anxious and happy and joyful and excited. All these reactions. We're not even in the game, really. It's just happening to us. But as we become more mindful, then we get in the game. And the way to do it is to start paying attention to what's happening. For me, the best tool has been to have a rule to stop and use a touchstone. What that means is that if I'm feeling, let's say, some anxiousness, as soon as I notice that I'm feeling it, this could be frustration, this could be anger, you can even do it when you feel excitement or you feel up. It's just as difficult to do it at those times as it is to do it with, quote, negative emotions. As soon as I feel that emotional state, I stop whatever I'm doing and I bring my awareness to a touchstone. A touchstone can be so many things. Let's say you're going to take one that's available to all of us all the time, and that's your breath. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take one breath. And I'm going to focus on the experience of that breath. Now what I've done is I've taken my mind out of that automatic reaction. I've stopped, and now I can look. And if I was really excited about something, I can say, wow, okay, feeling that excitement. Kind of think about, okay, what is it that really creates this excitement for me? What does the excitement feel like? And by going into it more, I can enjoy that sensation more. But by doing it mindfully, I'm not lost in it. I enjoy it like I'm enjoying a sauce, but I'm not lost in it. By not being lost in it, I'm not at the mercy of it, because often we're excited, and then the thing doesn't come to pass as we thought, and we have a crash. If I've gone consciously into excitement, I can feel that excitement, be up about it. If it doesn't come to pass, wow, I could enjoy that excitement leading up to it. It didn't come to pass, but I got the gift of the excitement leading up to it. Wow, how cool is that? Do you see how this changes things? If it's a negative thing, the same way. Stop as soon as I'm feeling, let's say, that anxiety. And taking one breath, centering myself down, and looking more carefully. And saying, okay, do I really know what's good or bad? This thing that I'm anxious about, is this storytelling? Where I'm just making up ideas and thoughts in my head, which usually that's what anxiety is? And can I retrain my mind to go where I want? To say, you know what? I don't need to spend time on these fantasies that are creating anxiety. Instead, I'm going to come into my senses. I'm going to taste the food that I'm eating. Instead of dwelling in an imaginary fantasy land of anxiety, I'm going to taste that food. This sounds simple on the outside, but it's not. If you're suffering from anxiety, you know how powerful and overwhelming it is, how stimulus comes and reaction follows. So we have to be so lovingly patient with ourselves as we retrain our minds. We have to allow ourselves time to expand that space out, to really congratulate ourselves when we catch ourselves. Because there's going to be times when that stimulus happens and you feel the beginning of reaction and you stop and you breathe. And every time you do that, you're expanding out another millimeter by millimeter. You're expanding out that space between that stimulus and that reaction. And that allows you to respond. The thing in that middle there is response. Response is conscious. We look at the situation. I won't say objectively, because I don't really believe in anything being objective. But we can look at it more carefully. We can be a little bit more rational about it. We can taste the emotions and not get sucked into them and attached to them. We can recognize stories that are playing out and not become entranced with those stories. The other powerful tool we have is meditation. And to me, there's really 3 parts of our brain that we train with meditation. I'm just going to talk about 2 of them today. The one is awareness. And awareness is just simply being aware of what is happening. Again, in our external realm, but also in our internal realm. Now that kind of meditation, where I just quietly sit and I pay attention to my mind's activity. I don't try to focus on nothing. I don't try to find stillness or have no thoughts. I just pay attention and watch my mind go. And watch that tendency of the mind to begin telling a story, and I can watch it for a while. Oh, look at that unfold. And then, like a really good movie, I get swept into it and I get lost in it. And 2, 3 minutes, 10 minutes later, I come out and say, oh, wow, I was taken over. I was swept into that story. I was no longer consciously watching it. I became the story. And if we can start to see that shift, that allows us to become more and more conscious, to watch the storytelling unfold. The more we can just watch our mind's activity like that, the more we become simply aware of it. Without awareness, we're at the mercy of it. Aware of it, we can stay conscious during it, and the story doesn't sweep us in. To do this meditation, I sit, I stand, I lie down, just watch. Just watch your mind. Let it think. Let it do its storytelling. It's just fine. Just watch. And again, notice when you're swept away and come back to observing the stories. The second aspect of meditation is focus or attention. In this part of our mind, we train the mind's eye, if you will, to go where we want it to go. Because what's going to happen here in this space between stimulus and reaction is that the mind is automatically going to the reaction. And now, in the first part, mindfulness, I became aware of that shift. There's the stimulus. Whoa, watch the reaction unfold. That brings me into response. But by training my mind to go where I want it to go, now I've changed the whole game. Because instead of the mind getting to go run down that story, I can say, actually, you're going to come back here to paying attention to the sound in the distance of the woodpeckers, to the feeling of my breathing, to the soft sound of the wind. When I do that, I'm back in my senses. My thinking mind isn't running around. You know, I think if we could go back in time to our ancestors, we would find that they were 99% of the time in their sensory mind. That's pure awareness. They had to be aware of their environment. 1% of the time in that thinking mind. Thinking is actually a very specialized tool. It's very useful for figuring out a problem. But that's not the way we use it anymore. Once in a while we use it to figure out a problem, but usually we're using it just to follow stories, let it take us on rides, and it takes us off into anxiety, into frustration, into anger, in 1,000 different directions. Here we train our mind to focus on one thing. Basic mindfulness meditation. Sit, pay attention to my breathing. Every time my mind goes off, I bring it back to the breath. Or focus on one thing. I can find a little mark on a tree, and I can sit and I can stare at that mark, and I can try to keep my attention on it. My mind's going to go off thinking. I bring it back to that little mark on the tree. My mind goes off, bring it back. again and again. Every time I do that, I'm training that focus. These tools, the mindfulness, the awareness meditation, and the focus meditation, these are basic training for our mind. If we're not doing these things, it'd be the same as if we're taking our bodies and just sitting on a couch all the time. Our mind will not be in shape. We will be at the mercy of it. Do these things and our mind begins to come under our own guidance. We take the driver's seat again instead of just being along for the ride. So my friends, reality is what happens between stimulus and reaction. So many of us are living, and this happens to me as well, even after years and years of training, so I understand how difficult it is. We become at the mercy of everything that's happening around us. Let's switch that game around. Basic training for our minds. Mindfulness, awareness, focus. These three things together, they're going to expand the space between stimulus and reaction. They're going to make us aware of the mental processes that happen between stimulus and reaction, move us into response, and they're going to allow us to re-guide and to shift that so that we're not just trapped by inevitably going to that singular reaction. My friends, thank you. I always love hearing from you. It just makes my day. A few of you have been writing these comments that, literally bring tears to my eyes and Rebecca's eyes. We're just so touched by them when you let us know how much of a difference this makes in your lives. So thank you. It means the whole world. Thanks for being part of our community. And those of you that have been connecting more through email and such, it feels like a deepening of connection and friendship. And we are so grateful. Love to you all. Talk with you soon.